Welcome to the third in the series of platicas sponsored by El Paso Community College with a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. My name is Richard Baquera. I'm from the history discipline at El Paso Community College, the Valle Verde campus. Today we are honored and pleased to welcome back actually Dr. Emma Perez, who is currently at the University of Colorado at Boulder. So welcome, Emma, and have some questions to ask. First of all, your book is titled The Decolonial Imaginary, Writing Chicanas into History. And the very first thing when I saw the book, I wondered, what do you mean by the decolonial imaginary?
Well, that's a very good question, Richard. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be back in El Paso because, as you know, I lived here for 14 years, and I taught at UTEP for a very long time at the University of Texas here in El Paso. Everybody here knows what UTEP is. I don't know. I guess I've been in Colorado too long and people don't know what UTEP is, but I was in the history department, and that's when I published the book, actually. I thank my department as well and my Chicano studies students because they were instrumental in helping me conceptualize and theorize this book. And I think I probably could not have written this book the way I did had I not lived here for as long as I did. But I'm also a Tejana, and that my history as a Tejana, growing up around San Antonio and the San Jacinto battleground, have a lot to do with why I wrote the book the way I did and why I call it what I call it. The decolonial, in my mind, is a very important concept. I'm not the only one using that concept. You'll find people in cultural studies also using it. You'll find third world scholars who are doing work on African studies or Latin American studies also using it because they're basically referring to a colonial moment. I mean, we know as historians, you've studied history, that we have countries like European countries as having colonized places in Africa, Latin America, Mexico, but what I also refer to is that the United States as an empire has also had its colonial moments. So if we're going to look at Chicano history, Chicano and Chicana history, then we have to do what Rudy Acuña says in Occupied America and basically take a look at the moments when colonization affected our populations. And that, as we well know, begins in 1521 with the Españoles, right? So
instead of seeing colonization and colonies and imperial as the empire, what you're seeing then, or what you're saying is there are peoples and cultures who are being colonized, right? That's what you're saying. So that would be the Chicanos and the Chicanas.
Yeah, and that there's an historical political moment of institution building, of institution imposition, right, that we know occurred with the Españoles. This happens again with the U.S.-Mexico War in this area. You know, this area knows that very well. But where I think Chicano studies is important is that it is in that time lag between the colonial and the post-colonial. People have argued now that we're living in a post-colonial era. What that means is that now South Africa's free, now Mexico has been post-colonial for a long time because it hasn't been under the imposition, under the reign of Spain. But it's a new moment, a neo-colonial moment that people are speaking of. But I think that if indeed we are political and politicized and interested in social transformation, and I think that's why we become historians, because we really are interested in social change. So we study the past to see how we can not make the same mistakes and how we can also begin to do things differently. I see the decolonial as a way of reframing ourselves, retraining ourselves, rethinking the way that we are living in the world today. And Chicano studies is between the colonial and the post-colonial. We're not quite at the post-colonial yet. That hasn't occurred for us. But we're decolonizing our minds, we're decolonizing our behavior, we're attempting not to be in a colonial mindset.
I was going to ask you what needs to happen
So much.
for Chicanos and Chicanas to be in the post.
I am an educator for a reason. I really believe in the classroom.
We are.
We are both educators for reasons. I've known you for a long time. When I was at UTEP, you were also teaching there. You were across the hall from me, even though you don't remember that.
Sorry.
I remember very well. But anyway, you'd think I wouldn't. My mind is sort of, the older we get, our brain cells start to go. But I think education, whether it's in the classroom or outside of the classroom, I think the education of our people is very, very, very important. That's why I think that the program that you're running right now, that you're getting Chicano studies and Chicana studies off the ground, that you're getting grants from the NEH, is so vital, and expanding our programs. I was very proud of UTEP when we got our PhD in Borderlands history, because I think that's another facet of helping us. I think it's important to recover our history. I think that's a very instrumental first step, recovering our history. I mean, when we look at the 1960s, what's one of the first things that a lot of the Chicano movement folks talked about? We need classes in Chicano studies, but we also want to know our history. We don't know our history. We know the U.S. history because you've taught us about Ben Franklin all of these years, but we don't even know the importance of people like, who were some of the people that we've been recovering? I mean, we didn't know Ricardo Flores Magón and his importance as an intellectual to our community.
Felix Longoria.
Felix Longoria también. We didn't know, certainly now Cesar Chavez. At the time, Cesar Chavez was also, very involved in the social movement, but it's very important to continue his legacy and everything he did for our communities.
Somebody else I always remember is Ignacio Zaragoza.
Ignacio Zaragoza.
People from Texas
Yes,
do not
Zaragoza,
realize
absolutely.
that the hero of the Battle of Puebla, Cinco de Mayo, was a Tejano.
Yes, the Zaragozas, absolutely. And we can't forget the women, current day. I mean, she's still alive, but Dolores Huerta is a living legend, as we well know. We cannot forget her contributions.
I've been campaigning to get her here to visit us
Good.
for a while. I hope we can.
I hope you can, because she's still fiery. I just saw her a few months ago in the National Association of Chicano and Chicana Studies. She's still fiery. She's still standing, and she's still struggling and inspiring all of us. Yeah, she's wonderful.
So you've kind of started, I had another question I was going to ask you if you had any suggestions, because we are a new program. This is just, we're less than 2 years old as a Chicano Studies program.
Yeah.
You mentioned that we have the grant.
Yeah.
We have, the program is organized. Any other suggestions?
Well, continuing to do grant writing and get outside money, because, and I know this was an issue, this is always an issue in education, is getting outside money. We get just so much from, when we're public institutions, right? We get just so much from tuition and just so much from the government. So that's why outside money is so important. But it's also important to the struggle never ends. And so we have to continue battling to expand our programs, to make sure people know and educate people and show them, look, this is why we need Chicano and Chicana studies. This is why we need more professors in our area. This is why we need more professors who are Chicanos and Chicanas as well, because students have a right to see representation, to be mirrored back. It's very important to be mirrored back.
So basically then, the way you see it, education is the base.
I've always thought that, and I think you think so too.
Yes, and then from there, we would move to political activities and other.
I think it's important, I think community work, we can't forget the importance. This is why I loved living here too, and because I think there's always an effort to tie community with the academy, more so in places like El Paso. I know that my colleague Yolanda Leiva, who is teaching at University of Texas in El Paso, is really instrumental in making sure that there is that connection between the university and the academy. I think it's something that we just naturally do as coming from our community. We can't forget that. We go home, we go to our community, right? And so we're always encouraging our family members, our community, to go to college. I know you have nephews and nieces, and you're encouraging them to go off.
Yes.
I have a daughter now who's 1. I mean, she's got no choice. There is no choice, right? Of course. I have a little sister who, of course, went to the university. I mean, this is something, and my parents